Okay, good. So now it's on YouTube. And here we are. Great. Okay. I have Darlene here. Ron, welcome everybody. So we're here with Dr. Mitchell Kurk. He's the author of this excellent book, Prescription for a Long Life, Essential Remedies for Longevity, that I read and studied. It's a lifetime of experience. So, you know, the purpose of this conversation is just for us to talk about healthcare, talk about longevity as a concept. How do we get there? I want to understand why Dr. Kurk, at his age of a youthful 90 plus, still works a full schedule. Like, why? Like, what is the philosophy behind that? Because I think our society is all looking forward to retiring at 65. And I think that is, in my mind, I've just seen people deteriorate pretty quickly after 65 once they retire, because whether it's a lack of purpose, whether it's a lack of mission, whether it's a lack of getting up in the morning and doing something with yourself and your experience in your life, something about that retirement that has me concerned. So, Dr. Kurk, welcome. Nice to see you.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you.
Very excellent. Okay. So you're a practicing doctor. You're here in my neighborhood. And you've been practicing now for about 50 years, I think, right?
At least. Since 1962.
1962.
How many years is that? Wait a minute. Is that 60 years?
40, 50, 65. No. So that's 60. 62.
That's 40 and 20. That's 60 years. Unbelievable.
That's very impressive to do anything. And do you still have the same passion and love for the work that you did when you first started?
More so than ever, yes.
Is that right? And you have such a unique practice and such a unique approach, which, you know, I've been to your office. You've done some really great therapies on me as well. And I've met some of the people you have in your waiting room. There are a lot of ladies in their 80s and 90s.
Yes.
Who are, you know, they look youthful. They're bright. They have this light in their eye. They're thin for the most part. So there's something about your care that's unique. And what would you say? What would you say is unique about your approach, philosophy, and the people that come to you?
Well, it's not so unique. The important thing is to eat properly. You have to eat healthy foods. Doesn't have to be organic 100%, but you got to eat healthy foods. You know, they shouldn't be eating McDonald's or Burger King and too much salt, things like that. You have to have less stress in your life. Stress is very bad for you. You know, you get the stress, you get heart attacks and strokes, elevated pressure, heart attacks. Stress is very important, but eating stress less or stress-free environment is important. Have yourself a good companion that you get along with. Go out and enjoy yourself with life. You know, don't stay home all day. Don't stay in bed. Don't stay in bed all day. Go to the gym, exercise. Exercise is extremely important. Exercise. Take a nice walk every day. Get some of that beautiful sunshine. Of course, if you have cancer of the skin, be careful with the sunshine on the face. But those elements are very important.
So
some vitamins, take some good vitamins and minerals.
Well, that's one of the things I've noticed, that a lot of us become depleted in important vitamins and minerals. Many times we become toxic. Like we've tested my blood, my heavy metal toxicity number of times. And I think like everybody else has high levels of heavy metal exposure. And then it bioaccumulates in your system and undermines your body's ability to function optimally. So it's the depletion of important vitamins and minerals, it's the toxicity, and it's damaged digestion. I think a lot of people are walking around with inflamed digestion. They're walking around with leaky gut. They're not absorbing the nutrition. and they're not assimilating it. Is that accurate?
That's correct. Absolutely.
So in your practice, you do some really innovative things to address those deficiencies and toxicities. You do chelation therapy, you do different IV therapies, you do is that ozone? The one that I'm doing, what is that? That's the ozone plus
Ultraviolet light.
ultraviolet light and ozone.
Light.
Right. So first of all, how did you find this therapy? How long have you been doing it? And why do you like it?
Well, the ultraviolet light therapy has been around for 50 years, at least 50 years, starting out with Dr. Knott, Knott. And he took blood out of the patient, ran it through his machine, the Knott machine, where it absorbed the energy of light energy. He claimed that was very important. That ultraviolet light therapy, he cured many patients. At that time, there were no antibiotics. So he treated patients for pneumonia and abscesses, infections in the hospital, by the way, in the hospital many years ago. And he cured a lot of them. However, once the antibiotics started, the Knott therapy, the ultraviolet light therapy went down the tubes, as far as hospitals are concerned, as far as doctors are concerned, and antibiotics were the rage. But unfortunately, these days with the antibiotics, a lot of the antibiotics are failing. And these darn germs are getting so powerful, they overcome everything. But the other fish and the ultraviolet light, with the ozone sometimes, really helps eradicate a lot of these infections.
We have Darlene, Julia, Ron here. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have questions for Dr. Kurk, if there's something specific you'd like us to address and discuss, I'm happy to do it. Otherwise, I'll just ask what I want to know. Like everything else, I think, with the, and I don't want to get on the pharmaceutical industry too much here, but like what we saw during COVID, the goal was to get everybody vaccinated. So old and true medications that have been proven, that have been around for a long time, that are inexpensive, ivermectin and some of the others, were dismissed outright. And I think that's what happened with some of the therapies that were effective and have been around for many years and have been proven, like this UV therapy with ozone. And it was completely abandoned for most doctors. Are there a lot of doctors that use it today?
No, not at all.
You're one of the few?
One of the few. Originally, it's been used extensively in Russia. Russia treat a lot of patients with ultraviolet because their medical system isn't that good. And they look for ways to simplify treatment. And it's very simple to give a UBI treatment. It's no big deal. So they developed machines in Russia. I had a machine from Russia, about 20 years ago. And ultimately, we began to use the American-made machines. But Russians were very heavy into ultraviolet light, probably still are.
Well, one of the things that, as you said, Russians didn't have access to the technology, they didn't have the money, they didn't have the pharmaceutical industry. So they had to use things that were inexpensive. So fasting, they started using in the 1950s for a lot of chronic conditions. They would fast people for 25 days, 50 days, longer. And they found that to be a very effective technique. So people went into the woods, they had these little cabins there, a lake, and they would just stay there for weeks on end fasting. And so that is a very inexpensive and in some cases very effective therapy. Also, these UV therapies and some of the other ones are also relatively inexpensive compared to some of the other options that are around today. So you had it in your office all these years?
Yes.
And is there a particular kind of a condition that tends to respond better than another?
Well, the ultraviolet light is useful for a lot of the bacterial infections, even some of the viral infections. It definitely kills viruses as well. When you combine it with ozone, definitely kills viruses. Whereas the antibiotics, as you know, do not kill viruses. They only kill bacteria.
So is that like, would you say it's an anti-aging protocol, or it's more like when you have some kind of a chronic infection?
It's for chronic infection, but I would think it does have some anti-aging properties as well. Because it exposes the blood to light, you absorb the energy of the light. Apparently, there's a lot of energy in that light, and it goes into your system and it helps clear up a lot of conditions, including the aging process. So I use that at times for the aging process, along with other things, vitamins, minerals, chelation therapy, anti-stress, things of that type.
All right. So our goal is, and my focus is, and I read your book with great interest a number of times. It's really an experience of you kind of being in healthcare, having some personal issues in your family with chronic conditions, and then setting out on search around the world for something that can actually help address the underlying cause. Was our healthcare system always the way it is today? Has it always been focused on the management of disease, or was it more at some point like looking to address the underlying cause and resolve the issue permanently?
Well, that's the way it should be. The underlying cause.
I agree.
It's not good to treat only symptoms. What a doctors treat as symptoms of disease, and that's really not the best way to do it. You got to find out why. Why do you have the disease? They have a yeast infection. That's so common these days, especially in women. A yeast infection. If you take in the history of taking birth control pills and steroids, cortisone, a lot of antibiotics, those predispose you to candida, yeast infections. It's so common. And the traditional doctor really doesn't look for that, unfortunately.
So a yeast infection, what does that do for?
Candidiasis.
Candidiasis. So that affects your ability to assimilate and digest the food that you're consuming, right?
Well, candidiasis usually originates in the bowel. The bowel has diarrhea, altered bowel habits. You don't digest your food properly. The yeast causes a lot of dermatitis infections, fever unknown origin, FUO, fever unknown origin, and candidiasis is very common. In fact, I give most of my alternative medicine patients a candida questionnaire, which asks 10 simple questions, and if you get a certain score, probably you have candida just by filling out a questionnaire. The diagnosis of candida is not easy, because unfortunately, New York State is difficult to deal with. Originally, we had a candida blood testing and a LISA test for candida, which apparently you have trouble doing that in New York, so we don't do it anymore. We go more by the questionnaire and examination of the bowel. We do a Geneva test, a GI fundamental test, which does check the pathology of the bowel, including a yeast, if any yeast infection is there. Also, sometimes you can do, through the blood, a mold test, which includes candida as one of the items. So you got to put everything back together. A lot of time, go with symptoms. Symptoms are important.
And what's is mold also a popular issue?
Mold's a problem too. Look how much mold there is. With the rains and the weather we have, your house is full of mold. If you look at the air conditioners, look at the filters, look at the other areas of the air conditioner, you see mold. You see mold all over. Patients come to me, they have mold. And they have these symptoms of coughing, wheezing, they don't feel good. And a lot of times there's too much mold in the house. So sometimes it's not a bad idea to get someone to come in and check your house for mold. Very common.
Yeah, that's
definitely
a great suggestion. So your practice over all these years has been primarily addressing the underlying cause with the people that are actually like me, one of your clients. We do a lot of more proactive things that actually look to resolve the issue at the very root of the chronic condition. So I want to know, you were classically trained. You were trained as a medical doctor. which back in the day, is it any different, the training today than it was back then?
I'm trained as a DO, osteopathic physician. Went to the Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine many, many years ago, graduated 1960. And osteopathic physicians receive similar training as MDs, similar. When I graduated, though, the osteopathic physician was deemed a quack. Why? Because it went against the traditional MD approach. However, over the years, the osteopathic physician, the status became vastly improved. And now DOs are taking residencies in MD hospitals, and they're on the staffs of the medical schools in the different hospitals. They're very well accepted, the DOs, thank God. I had a lot of trouble with being a DO in the past. When I applied to Peninsula Hospital in Far Rockaway, where I had my practice, I was turned down because I was a DO. So I took the case to court, the Supreme Court, and in the Supreme Court, I won the case. So the finding was that the hospital had to admit me as a DO because the training was similar. However, in the upper courts, it was defeated, and I could not get on the staff of Peninsula Hospital. But 20 years later, they took me on the staff as a DO. So there you go. And a lot of the doctors there, the MDs, sent their children to osteopathic school to become doctors because they couldn't get into medical school, apparently. So how do you like that? So that's the history of osteopathic medicine.
Well, I love the osteopathic philosophy, kind of like I do the chiropractic philosophy. I think they've been around about the same time, 100 years plus, right?
Yeah.
So, and what I liked about the original thinking behind osteopathic medicine was that it was hands-on. It was more, holistic. It actually looked to address the underlying cause. It looked at the structure. It also did medication, but it also, I don't know, were you guys trained in nutrition?
Well, they weren't nutritional doctors. They were osteopathic physicians. They used some aspect of diet, I would imagine, yes. But it wasn't especially the diet, no.
But now you've been doing nutrition medicine for 40 years, probably.
At least.
What is nutrition medicine? What is that exactly?
Nutritional medicine, you have to discuss their diet. Yes, what you have for breakfast, what you have for lunch, supper, treats. You examine what the vitamins they're taking. And you can also do a blood test for different vitamins, if you like, a vitamin analysis. And that's the way you check. But you should be on a healthy diet, as I say, healthy, like Dr. Hoffman's salad and salmon diet. He has a very excellent diet that he uses. The Mediterranean diet is excellent. The Mediterranean diet. Think something like that. A lot of whole grains, fruits and vegetables.
So originally you got involved in this whole approach. You traveled the world. You went to all of these anti-aging longevity clinics because your wife 40 years ago was diagnosed with cancer, right? Is that
brain tumor?
A brain tumor.
Brain tumor.
So, this was 40 years ago?
This was in the 1970s.
So that's what I found in my experience doing this for over 20 years now, is that physicians who have been trained, like medical doctors for the most part, I think they're very difficult to dislodge from this philosophy because I don't know why. But DOs have this predisposition because I think they were trained in a more proactive approach philosophically, so that when you were dealing with this situation, you were open-minded enough to seek advice, ideas, different philosophies, approaches, technology, science from anyone that seemed like they have the right kind of results.
Well, first you start off with the traditional medical approach with a brain tumor. You go to the neurosurgeon, you consider surgery, which she had at New York Hospital. Afterwards, you consider radiation therapy, which she had. And then after a while, when she began to fail, the doctor said to me, there's nothing more we can do, which is a terrible thing to say to a husband and family. There's nothing more we can do. So I thought to myself, well, it's my wife. I have to try. So I researched the situation. I went into the alternative approach and went to several alternative hospitals, some of in the West Indies, to look for treatment. And we extended her life about 2 or 3 years with these alternative treatments, rather than giving up and doing nothing. Have to try.
Well, once somebody is already diagnosed with some kind of a life-altering condition, cancer, diabetes, heart disease, once something is broken, it's very difficult in the human body, from what I understand, it's very difficult to then try to fix it. But if you knew what you know now, and we would take you back 10 years before she was diagnosed, was there anything you'd be able to look for, do more proactively, her nutrition, her supplementation, diagnostic things? Or is it pretty much, it came out of the blue and there was nothing?
Well, looking back, she was under the care of some doctors, and they claimed it was a sinus headache, sinusitis, or migraine headaches. At that time, there was no CAT scan or MRI at that time.
Yeah.
So with the first CAT scan that was done, and that was in Mount Sinai Hospital, they had a CAT scan machine which disclosed the oligodendroglioma brain tumor. So in the elevator, the doctor says to me, the neurologist, well, you better go home and see a lawyer.
A lawyer? Why a lawyer?
Yeah, for the will, for the last what to do.
Oh.
So yeah, that's I don't like that. That's not the way to handle these things. You have to show a little compassion.
Yeah, bedside manner is.
That's right.
I met I think in this industry that we're in, a more proactive, holistic, human optimization approach. The doctors that I met are truly, they lead with their heart. They have compassion. They love their work. They love their patients, and it's such a beautiful environment to be in. I think it's inspirational, and the patients, the clients, the humans that find their way to these doctors are, I think, blessed on many levels, because there's so much wisdom that's available, and there's care in its original meaning, care.
Well, isn't that nice? I have to record what you just said. It's very nice and true.
Yeah, so that's has been my experience. So you wrote this book that was after, I guess, all these.
I wrote that book with Dr. Morton Walker. Dr. Morton Walker wrote about 50 books on medicine, nutrition, alternative medicine. He was a podiatrist who became a medical writer. Very smart young man.
Yeah.
Dr. Morton Walker.
Yeah, I read a few of his other books with some of the other doctors that I work with. Definitely a very thorough,
Yes.
Useful read. But if you were to just create a synopsis of what the philosophy and approach is in this book, what would you say?
Well, the philosophy is, number one, you have to eat properly. Have to keep your bowels active. You can't get constipation or diarrhea. You have to have normal bowel movements. Of course, you should really undergo colonoscopy on a regular basis. Don't let it go. It's important to make sure you don't have colon cancer. So colonoscopy
is that a more common?
Very
problem?
common. Very common.
More common now than before, would you say?
It's very common. Yeah, colon cancer. Pick it up. Even with the men, prostate cancer, you got to do the PSA on them. It's important. The PSA on men.
Yeah.
It's very important. I picked up 2 or 3 prostate cancers in men recently, because the statistics show that Black males, 1 out of 6 Black males develop prostate cancer. and 1 out of 23 Black males die of prostate cancer. So it's a racial disease, unfortunately. And you got to be very careful. The Black guys that we have.
But other races also have colon cancer, they have prostate cancer.
Prostate cancer. That's prostate cancer for men.
Every race has, or is it just the
Black males have a predominance more of the prostate cancer for men, yes.
That's interesting and unfortunate.
And I have a very big Black practice.
Huh.
I used to be in a area in Far Rockaway. It's predominantly Black. I get along well. I treat Black patients very well. They love me, and I love them.
You're a very likable man.
Yeah.
I don't think it matters what the culture that comes to visit your office is. The guests that we have here, if you guys have any questions for Dr. Kurk or anything you'd like to bring up as discussion, please shoot a note in the chat. Okay. So
one more thing, Alex, with this COVID, the COVID-19, we haven't seen the last of that. I think COVID-19 has really affected the human race because there's something called COVID long. What does that mean? After the COVID, you have different symptoms. In fact, in the latest AMA journal, the Journal of the American Medical Association, there's an article on how primary care physicians can recognize and treat long COVID. And there are so many symptoms of fatigue, chest pain, weakness, cardiac arrhythmias, dermatitis, all kinds of symptoms. And the fatigue is very important. Brain fog. It's so common. And basically, what's the treatment? There's hardly any treatment that we know of. I've been using vitamin C infusions, which seem to help. They do seem to help. A lot of the patients, young men, when you check their high sensitivity C-reactive protein, which is a test of the heart, a positive C-reactive protein. So the COVID-19 affected the heart.
So these are young men?
Young guys, 30s and 40s, and they feel terrible. So it's a plus. If you notice, there's a lot of shingles going around, shingles. I think there's some kind of interrelationship between having COVID and shingles, because why do so many people develop shingles these days? Never it wasn't like this before. Now people make sure, did you get your shingle shot, Alex? You ought to think about that. You don't want to get shingles. So I
don't want to get any shots.
Oh.
And I have my own concerns about COVID for sure, and its origins and its purpose. Like what was it? We know that it wasn't by accident. So people are saying
it's a human-made virus.
It's a bioweapon that was
human-made. The ones who developed that or who originated that should be put in jail. Whoever did it.
Yeah, or worse. Julia has a question. What's life expectancy of a man with PSA levels over 10? Not treated.
It's hard to say. You have to do a workup. First of all, they should be under the care of a very experienced oncologist or urologist. We usually recommend patients like that to Dr. Gil Lederman in New York, Dr. Lederman, who's an outstanding oncologist and he's specializing in radiation therapy that he devised, more or less. He's the leading expert in the country, I would say, and one of the experts in the world on treating prostate cancer. The life expectancy, it all depends how much is spread. You got to do MRIs and sonograms and see how it is.
Dr. Lederman spoke at our conference in the city, and I've been to his center. I saw the technology that he uses. It's very focused, and it doesn't radiate like a very large area. It focuses specifically on the cancer, which I liked. His results were very impressive. It's much better, I think, than surgery and having go in there, remove it, because it can cause a lot of complications if you're surgically in there. And also there's the Beljanski family that have been developing supplementation in France that specifically focuses on their focus is prostate. It's called Natural Source International. So you may want to check them out. Natural Source International, Sylvie Beljanski. Her father, Mirko Beljanski, was a scientist in France, Pasteur Institute, and he actually extended the life of their president. The president was dying of prostate cancer, and they thought that he was going to die in the middle of his term. He ended up living and finishing his term, so the opposition got really infuriated because he helped him live longer. So they went after him with helicopters and like SWAT teams and everything else like that.
Oh, jeez.
But his daughter, Sylvie Beljanski, is here. She's in New York City, and she's been carrying out his name and his work for another, I guess it's now 25 years in addition to the 50 that he put in. So, Julie, if that is helpful. So we're talking about longevity, and we're talking about how do we focus on living longer? Because I think if we focus on the management of chronic disease like we are in our society, we're all focused on cancer, heart disease, the two biggest killers in the United States. And then you have the healthcare system itself. Some people say it's the third killer, properly prescribed medications and the hospital systems and all that stuff. But it could be second or third or first, because do we know what's reported, what's not reported? How many people actually die from the therapies? I mean, we've seen this travesty during COVID and with the ventilators. So we don't know what is that, but if we focus on actually living longer, we can circumvent a lot of these chronic conditions that are so prevalent in our society. So Darlene, my pleasure, Julia, our pleasure. Darlene, I have some shaking. Is there anything I can do to calm down? Maybe you can explain a little bit. Shaking? What kind of shaking, Darlene?
There's tremors. Maybe she has tremors, huh?
Shaking.
She have essential tremors. First of all, she ought to see a neurologist. Check that. Unless she's taking some psychiatric drugs, which can give you that as well. Some psychiatric drugs. So check with her if she goes to a psychiatrist. But let her see a neurologist. Make sure she doesn't have essential tremors, which just are tremors that you can't do too much about. There are medications for tremors, such as Cogentin. There are medications. And there's one new one, I forget the name of it offhand. But tremors are not uncommon, not uncommon. I had a secretary who had essential tremors and nothing really worked on her. But essential means we don't know why, and it's nothing dangerous. But you have to see a neurologist to diagnose it.
All right, very good. So the focus is longevity. And what I wanted to ask you is, I mean, you're in your early 90s, from what I shared with me before. And God bless you, many, many more years of happiness and good health.
Thank you, Alex.
But I wanted to ask you, why didn't you retire at 65, 70, like everybody else?
What am I going to do? What are you going to do when you retire? You go out for dinner, you go on the golf course. Yeah. You talk, what are we going to eat for supper tonight? Not the way to do. I don't believe in retiring. I think retiring is not except if you're a teacher. Teachers love to retire. They live to retire, the teachers. In fact, if you go into some of the discussions, all they talk about is retiring.
Is that true?
But if you have an active profession like medicine or dentistry or podiatry, you can do a lot of good by staying around. We need doctors, compassionate doctors. So I don't know why people retire. I wouldn't like to retire. You don't have to work full time. You can work part time. But
you work a pretty busy schedule.
3 days. I work 3 days. That's enough.
Yeah, but it's, you have a lot of people that come see you.
But I'm on call. I'm on call all the time. If you want to reach me, just call my number. I'm there.
So would you say you're not retiring contributed to your health and cognitive sharpness?
Yeah. If I felt that I couldn't handle it, that I was not mentally okay, I wouldn't do it. I still can do it, and I enjoy it.
That's what I'm saying. Like I also don't want to retire. I like what I do. I have a mission and a purpose, and I feel like I'm just getting started. So retirement is not something I'm interested in. My goal is to live, to 100 healthy years.
120.
120. I wish I would have started 30 years ago. Then it would be 120. I don't know what my genetics is, but it's very possible because there's a lot of interest now in longevity. I don't know if you noticed, but a lot of doctors like Dr. Mark Hyman, Dr. Gundry, Stephen Gundry, they're all writing, Dr. Jeffrey Light, they're all writing books about longevity.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be the next frontier. How do we get people to live longer, but not just, you're in your 90s and you're working and you're busy and you're enjoying life and you're doing what you love. And I think it's a great way to live. And if you can stay this way to 100 or 110, that would be amazing. That would be such a blessing for the world. If we can continue our great work into our 90s and hundreds, early hundreds, mid hundreds. I don't know what's possible for the human body. They say
120.
They say the human body technically can live to be 150 or more. There's this Jean-Louise Calment. Maybe you've heard of her in France. She lived to be 122. And she was documented that she lived 122. She didn't have the best lifestyle. She didn't eat very well. She smoked. But she lived to be 122. So genetically speaking, the human potential for longevity is there. And now there's a lot of supplement companies that are developing these NMN supplements. Maybe you've heard of Dr. David Sinclair wrote this book called Lifespan. Here, this book. So he spoke about these supplements that actually help create autophagy in the body, which gets rid of a lot of the dead cells and all these tumors and things. So it's possible if the focus is longevity, that not only do we get to live longer, but we can by refocusing our attention from disease management and chronic illness and not getting cancer or managing cancer, that we can circumvent all these things because you provide the body everything it needs so that the new generation of cells are healthy, buoyant, vivacious, and they keep reproducing. It was the big deal. You keep making new good cells, right?
Sounds good to me.
Right. So that's my interest and that's my focus. And the people that come to your practice now, are you seeing people living longer, healthier? Like, what do you see among your client population? Is there any kind of common denominator among the people that live longer?
We have a lot of people in their 90s. They're tough people. They are tough. They know what they want. They know what they don't want. But a lot of them follow a good diet. They avoid the stress. Like I said, stress is not good. They eat properly. They take their supplements. They perhaps a lot of them get chelation therapy, which cleans out the arteries, which is good. I take that myself. And good lifestyle, no stress or limited stress.
Well, how do you not have stress? You have stress. I've seen you're dealing with patients, you're dealing with your staff, you're dealing with contractors that are installing your cables and all that. I saw you deal with these people. So you are, I wouldn't say you're stressed. You tend to be very easygoing, but this environment is stressful.
Yeah.
So
stress is a lot with family. If someone in the family is sick, you're under a lot of stress.
Oh, sure.
If someone in your family is a son of a gun, you fight with them. Stress. That's the stress. That's not.
Yeah, that's the ugly stress. I agree. Relationship stress like that can be very damaging.
Yeah.
If you're betrayed by somebody close to you, That can be very like betrayal is a very damaging experience and emotion. Anger, I think, is also very damaging. So if you're dealing with somebody that constantly gets you angry, that's a tough environment to be in.
Well, the whole country's under stress now. There's so much stress around. It's terrible, the division of the country. And that's not healthy for the people. Too much stress.
Right. So stress is definitely an issue, but also like, in judo, you use your opponent's energy and weight against them. So I think with stress is the same thing. If you take it full on, it can be damaging. But if you figure out a way how to deal with stress without becoming stressed and getting yourself all revved up, that's probably a better way of living life.
You should be a psychologist, Alex.
Well, I don't know if I'm going to be a psychologist, but I grew up in a very tough environment around taxi drivers, auto body people when I was in my mid-teens, I guess. My father's business, he used to run 24 yellow cabs.
Oh.
So I ended up running his business from the time I was 16 to 19 all by myself. So there was 60 employees. We had, it was a tough neighborhood also. It was on 47th and 11th Street back in the early 80s. And so I remember getting myself really like infuriated at some points in my life. But then I figured out that wasn't doing anything for me. It didn't create the kind of results I wanted to create. So I learned just by being in that environment of what works and what doesn't work, how to deal with people in a way where, you're more flexible. Anyway, so
if things get bad, Alex, you can always drive a taxi. Don't forget, huh?
Well, taxis, yellow cabs, my dad had 24. At the time, they were worth $1 million each. Now they're worth nothing because you have Uber and Lyft and all the other companies out there. So, all the industries went through that kind of upheaval. But speaking about longevity, can we talk about some of the things you do in your office that are unique to you? And some of the therapies you do that are unique to you. And every time I come to you, I mean, your place is busy. You have lots of people doing IVs of different types. What's happening in your office that is different?
Well, we do different kinds of IVs. The most popular one is the vitamin mineral infusion, which has vitamin C, calcium, magnesium, multi-minerals. Basically, that's the formula. And it has 25,000 milligrams of vitamin C, which is important. Patients feel improved. That's very good also for the COVID long.
For the what?
COVID long, the effects of COVID afterwards, after the COVID.
Well, high dose vitamin C is probably good for a lot of things. High dose vitamin C. Venus. Yeah.
Absolutely. So that's one of the things we use. Another treatment we use is hydrogen peroxide. Hydrogen peroxide, you put some
intravenous hydrogen peroxide.
Intravenous, you use peroxide on the cut. You buy a bottle of peroxide in the pharmacy and you put it on the cut, So in the First World War, the patients were dying like crazy from flu. So there was nothing available, no antibiotics, no nothing. The patients were dying, and this doctor said to himself, well, I got to try something. He said, if hydrogen peroxide works on cuts and bruises, maybe it can work intravenously. So he started to give it intravenously. And lo and behold, his patients did much better than patients who did not get hydrogen peroxide. So it's around since the First World War. It's very valuable for candida, good for viral infections, good for herpes zoster, herpes 1 and 2. It's good for any kind of infection, pneumonia. It's an excellent treatment, very good for a lot of diseases. And we use that a lot.
Well, that's so interesting because you remember Dr. Jimmy Kilimanjaro, my dentist, the biomedical dentist, he recommends hydrogen peroxide for brushing your teeth.
Good.
So, and I'm a big fan of hydrogen peroxide and also alcohol for any scrapes or skin damage. But intravenous Hydrogen
Intravenous
peroxide.
hydrogen peroxide.
Is this a special hydrogen peroxide that
It's hydrogen peroxide. It's made by a compounding pharmacist. They compound the hydrogen peroxide.
and when would you use
Usually 3%.
when would you use that?
You use it for any kind of illness, any disease, herpes, pneumonia, uh, sore throats. Sometimes you can use it for that. Infections on the skin. It's a good, you can't call it an antibiotic, but it does the purpose of the antibiotic. But it's hydrogen peroxide.
Would you use it for psoriasis also?
I don't know if that works in psoriasis. I don't have experience with that. You can read something about that in my book on hydrogen peroxide.
Okay,
It
okay.
discusses that. It's an excellent treatment.
I'll
And then,
review
of course,
it.
we use ozone by itself. It's called white ozone. We put ozone in. Ozone is O3. Then we can use the hydrogen peroxide. We can use rather the UBI therapy with ozone, without ozone. The circulation of blood into the system after exposing it to light, a special machine for light. Then you have this PK protocol, which has some phospholipids in there. It's good for dementia, problems with fatty acids, if you have any fatty acid problem. It's a good formula called PK protocol, developed by Dr. Patricia Kane, Kane. It's a specialized kind of treatment that you use for certain conditions. So basically, those are them. And then you can alter some of the treatments to include some youthful. We can add some glutathione to the treatments. Glutathione is very useful. Glutathione intravenous. It's called anti-aging. For muscle problems, we can add more magnesium. We can sometimes add some proteins in there for weakness. We can add some protein formula. There's a lot of things to do. Everything is custom made, more or less, that we do.
I love a lot of the things you do there, and I love your philosophy, and I love the fact that you're the embodiment of your book, Prescription for Long Life, Essential Remedies for Longevity.
I should put my picture on the front cover next time if we redo it.
Yeah, I mean, there's no picture here at all, Dr. Kurk.
No picture of me.
That's not right. The whole back should be.
Yeah, you're right. I agree.
So I love the glutathione. I've done that in your office, and you know what I think is that we're using medicine today kind of like as an emergency. Like once you develop some kind of chronic illness, we go to our doctor, and whether they are using regular standard allopathic approaches like with drugs and vaccines and surgery and hospitalization, that kind of stuff, or we'll go to a holistic doctor like you to try to fix problems. But a lot of the things you have there can actually provide the body so many different important things so that you could look more youthful, you can age slower, you can be healthier, you can live longer. So I think we're using medicine, we're using brilliant physicians like you and the science that we have developed over the last 100 years a little bit backwards. If we had a way of using these things more proactively, then we wouldn't need to fall into these depths of chronic illness for many of us, I think. Wouldn't you say?
Well, unfortunately, these treatments we're discussing, the IV treatments, are not covered by insurance. So a lot of people can't afford it, or they don't want to spend the money. It's not covered by insurance.
I think people need to prioritize what's important. But we're taught as a society that medicine should be free. And I think that's the problem. Somebody else should be paying for our medicine, whether it's the government or the insurance company or, the next politician that makes the most noise, Bernie Sanders. They all want you to think that somebody else should be paying for your healthcare. This is the dumbest thing, because if we had the same philosophy about somebody maintaining our house, we would all be living in projects in the most dire conditions. But you have your house and you call in the plumber comes in and does the plumbing, and you pay them a lot. Somebody comes to paint your house, you hire them, they bring a crew, you pay them a lot. So people afford the things they think are important to afford. And with our health, we've been taught that wait until you develop a chronic illness, do whatever you want, eat whatever you want, don't worry about anything. And then the insurance company or the government is going to take care of you, which is so bizarre because Medicare isn't paying for anything today. Isn't that right? I mean, they're paying so little.
They pay low. They pay low, and that's right, they do pay low.
The insurance companies are giving you so much of a hard time about everything. Like you can't authorize anything. You got to fight with them on the phone if you accept health insurance. So it's a bureaucracy. So the only way, and medicine doesn't need to be so expensive either. Like if you had another, I don't know how many you would want to take, but if you had like a whole bunch of clients coming into you paying cash and not getting involved with all the bureaucracies in between, then the pricing can come down when you have an influx of cash clients. But everybody comes in with their own third-party payer, and that adds a lot to the cost.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You're right. People don't want to. A lot of people don't want to pay, unfortunately.
Julia has a question. If my aunt who has melanoma can see him, oncologist told her that she has no cure. She can't tolerate chemotherapy. Melanoma. Is that something you work with?
Melanoma is very difficult to treat. Dr. Liederman. Tell it to Dr. Liederman.
Dr. Liederman with
Gil Liederman in Manhattan. We discussed him previously, the oncologist with the radiation therapy.
Yeah, Gil Liederman, but he does radiation therapy?
Liderman. Gil Liederman. Liderman.
Radiation therapy for melanoma?
Yeah.
But also like some of the IV therapies, vitamin C, vitamin D, none of those would help. Like in addition,
no, you can't now. Melanoma, you have to. Yeah, I would definitely take it to Dr. Liederman, who's triple board certified in oncology, internal medicine, and radiation therapy.
Yeah,
qualified.
And he accepts all insurances for his
Medicare, no problem.
Yeah,
because it's a standard treatment. It's a standard treatment that he specializes in that treatment.
Right.
It's being used more by different doctors now a lot, but he's the expert.
I hope that helps, Julia. So, I'm going to start wrapping up here. It's 7:53, another few minutes. But if you guys have any final questions, please let me hear them. And Dr. Kurk and I will try to address them for you. But ultimately, I'm really happy that you and I crossed paths. I think originally it was maybe 10, 15 years ago. You spoke at my events when I first started doing the Naval Expo back so many years ago now. And I really appreciated that because that you're local. I mean, you are one of the few doctors who practice the way you do, probably in the country, I imagine, who are still practicing in their 90s. I mean, how many doctors?
That's true. And then, but there are more and more doctors like the American Academy of it's called 4M, A4M. And it was developed by Dr. Bob Goldman and Dr. Ronald Klatz. Dr. Bob Goldman was a former patient of mine in Far Rockaway when he was a little boy. He worked, he lived in a project, more or less a project with his folks. I treated his mother and father and his grandmother, Dr. Goldman. And he became a very big sports guy. He's a wrestler. And he went on and he formed this organization, A4M, which is massive.
I've been to his conferences. He has conferences.
A4M, yeah, it's unbelievable.
And Las Vegas, and they're huge. They get like 8,000 doctors there.
Yep. A4M.
It's incredible, and I love that doctors are more interested in this kind of medicine.
Yes.
And they can only do it if there's a direct relationship between client, the patient, and them. They can't accept insurance because as soon as health insurance gets involved, it changes the whole dynamic.
Can't accept insurance.
So the only way we can have proactive medicine that's focusing on longevity and optimal function and anti-aging, slowing the aging process, looking our best into our 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. It has to be a direct relationship with people that can actually help you, that have an interest in helping you. Because I've been to doctors that have no interest in helping you resolve the underlying cause, primarily because we talk about health insurance, but the context of health insurance doesn't give them the necessary resources to actually spend enough time to figure out what might be the underlying cause. If you're candida infestation, deficiency, toxicity, what is the problem? That takes time. That takes
time.
Interest.
Do the best you can. But if you come for alternative medicine, we can't take insurance. We spend as much time as necessary. We don't look at the clock.
I appreciate Dr. Kurk. So you are, it's Limbrook, right? Where are you?
Lawrence.
Sorry, Lawrence. You're in Lawrence. Dr. Mitchell Kurk, K-U-R-K. You can Google him and find him. He's one of my favorite doctors on this planet. And I love going to his office.
And the solar system, not only the planet, the solar system.
Well, that depends if there's intelligent life out there in Mars and stuff. But Dr. Gar, I really appreciate you, and I thank you for doing this with me. And everyone who joined us here, thank you very much for being here. I encourage you, if you'd like to reach out to Dr. Kurk, he's very helpful, and he knows everything about everything and everybody in the field. He'll be more than happy to help you, I'm sure. Dr. Kurk, have a great night. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you for being here with me.
See you soon.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Have a great night.